Hey, I'm Mr. Sato. I'm going to show you how to write a supporting paragraph. In a persuasive essay, you make some sort of claim, then try to convince your reader to agree with you. To my thinking, claim, thesis, and assertion all mean the same thing. And by persuasive essay, I mean any kind of writing where you're trying to persuade your reader to agree with your opinion. Book review, letter to the editor, letter to the school board, op-ed, sales pitch, that sort of thing. This video will explain how to write a paragraph in that essay that supports your claim with evidence. If you don't back up your claim with evidence, well, then you'd just be shooting your mouth off, spouting an opinion with nothing to back it up. There are plenty of people like that in the world, and believe me, you don't want to be one of them. Okay, let's say hypothetically, your town has a law banning pit bulls, and you think that's unfair and discriminatory. Or if you believe that the ban is good and should be retained, then your thesis would say that instead. But in this video's example, our thesis, our claim, is that the law banning pit bulls should be repealed or struck down. A supporting paragraph, which is what this video is about, should make it more likely for your reader to agree with that claim. Here's the basic three-part structure of a supporting paragraph: transition, supporting evidence, explanation of support. In this diagram, the transition is red, the supporting evidence section is green, and the explanation is white. All three parts together make up one paragraph. It doesn't always have to be in exactly this shape, but any good supporting paragraph will have all of these elements in some form. The red part, your transition, depends entirely on what came before it. You need to tell your reader that you're done talking about this and you're about to start talking about that. And here's how those two things are related. For example, if the paragraph is the first paragraph where you're giving supporting evidence, you just briefly indicate that by writing something like first, or to begin with, or one reason that blah, blah, blah. You are conveying to your reader that you're starting to give your supporting evidence. If the previous paragraph gave an opposing position, you could transition with however, or on the other hand. You're telling your reader that you're about to give a different position than the one you just wrote about. Or if you're about to show the effect of whatever you wrote about in the previous paragraph, you could write something like consequently, or the result of this is. You get the idea. You're telling the reader how what you're about to tell them relates to what you just told them. If you want more help with your transition, watch my other video on that topic. It's about transitions and nothing else. Here's the URL. So in our essay about the pit bull ban, let's say in the previous paragraph, we just wrote about the number of people in the US who go to the emergency room after being bitten by dogs every year. That number is 300,000. But that's dogs in general, mind you, not pit bulls necessarily. You can transition into your new paragraph with, in light of these statistics, it may seem reasonable to consider a ban on pit bulls, the dogs who are most associated in the public imagination with dog attacks. However, pit bull bans fail to achieve their main purpose, reducing the number of pit bull attacks. Some teachers would call this a topic sentence. So these two sentences together make up your paragraph transition. Next, evidence. This is the middle part of your supporting paragraph, the green part of our diagram, the part where you support your claims with evidence. Your reader needs to know how you know this, what your evidence is. Two things to be cautious of. First, it's okay to quote someone else's opinion if they're qualified in some way, like an expert. But be careful of supporting your own opinion with someone else's opinion. That might not be a solid foundation to stand on. Second, your supporting paragraph shouldn't just gush about how cute they are and how your uncle's pit bull is the sweetest puppy in the world. No, don't do that. That may be true, but it isn't strongly persuasive. That's what's called anecdotal evidence. Your supporting paragraph should give hard evidence that supports your opinion, evidence that you found in your research. For example, you could cite the fact that in 1984, Denver banned pit bulls, and despite thousands of dogs being euthanized, there was no change in the number of bites from pit bulls. The overall number of bites declined during that period, but not because fewer pit bulls were biting people. That number stayed the same, about 12 per year. Then cite your sources so your reader knows that you aren't just making this stuff up. It's often a good idea to include a second similar piece of evidence in the same paragraph. For example, you could point out that in Prince George's County, Maryland, they banned pit bulls at a cost of more than $250,000 per year. And in 2003, a study commissioned by that county came to the conclusion that, quote, public safety is not improved as a result of the ban, unquote. Again, cite your source. The Denver and Prince George's County examples are your supporting evidence. Then you move on to the third part of your supporting paragraph, the explanation. This is the white part of the diagram. Here you explain why your evidence proves what you say it proves, even if you think it's obvious, because it might not be obvious to your reader. You could write something like, the bans in Denver and Prince George's counties show that breed-specific bans simply don't work. Not only that, they could lead authorities to ignore more likely predictors of dog bites, like owners mistreating their dogs of any breed, using them in dogfights, and allowing them to roam the neighborhood without a leash. This ban could, in fact, make people of our town less safe. Do you see how that explanation tells your reader that your evidence supports your claim? It explicitly says it. Bans don't work, reminding your reader what point you're trying to make. It also elaborates on why a ban won't reduce dog bites. To elaborate means to give more detail to make something clearer, or maybe make it more persuasive. In that part about ignoring likely predictors, we gave more detail about why a ban might actually produce the opposite effect. Another name for this explanation part is analysis. Based on some student essays I've seen, some beginning writers don't think it's necessary to give that explanation. They're wrong. I always tell them about the worst lawyer in the world. Your Honor, slaps a piece of paper onto the table, this proves my client is innocent. I think that speaks for itself. Terrible lawyer. That lawyer needs to explain that that piece of evidence is a hotel receipt showing the defendant was not in town on the night of the murder, so it's impossible for him or her to have committed the crime. That's what a good lawyer would do, right? That's why you explain why the evidence supports your claim. So those are the three parts of a supporting paragraph: a transition, evidence, and an explanation of support. Your essay should probably have other kinds of content like some of these options, depending on what it is you have to communicate. But you definitely can't write a persuasive essay without giving reasons why your reader should agree with you. And that's what a supporting paragraph does. All right, I hope that was helpful. I have other videos about essay writing. They might be helpful too. Okay, good luck.